Nintendo Switch 2 online bans keep on coming. People keep on getting upset about it. You love to see it because everyone that's upset about this is not a Nintendo fan. They are just worthless. They can't exist without piracy because they have no value to contribute to society. And the funny thing is, it's completely justified when you actually get into how the Mig Switch works. That's going to be the big focus on this video. So if you enjoy it, don't forget to leave a like, share with your friends, comment your thoughts down below. So this comment and further research made me realize, yeah, everyone upset about this or defending the Mig Switch has no idea what they're talking about. Just going to ignore that the Mig Switch is technically not legal since you're essentially copying the game to another game card, which is considered a form of pirating. Just like burning CDs back in the day was technically pirating. Now, if you made CDs for yourself and used them, no one was going to come after you and they didn't even know what was happening. But it's when you start distributing it that you really get into serious law breaking. But that goes into the whole thing people talk about, like, well, I'm allowed to have a second copy. Let's see what the law says about it. Flashbang warning. So yeah, can I back up my computer software under certain conditions provided by Section 117 of the Copyright Act, although the precise term is archival copy, not backup copy. These terms are used interchangeably. Under Section 117, you or someone you authorize may make a copy of an original computer program if the new copy is being made for archival purposes only. And this is why Nintendo is banning you from online, which is a light slap on the wrist compared to what they should do for your violation of copyright law. It's no longer a backup if you're actively playing on it while having a fully functional game cartridge that you copied from. That the archival copy is supposed to be if the original is damaged, lost, otherwise unusable, degrading, or something like that. So it kind of defeats the purpose of the Mig Switch unless you just kind of like dump games onto it and then you hold it for when the original is lost and then you're technically legally allowed to use it at that point. You are not permitted under Section 117 to make a backup copy of other material on a computer's hard drive, such as other copyrighted works that have been downloaded. So this is where, like, oh, if I own the game, I'm not allowed to download a separate ROM. That's just straight up piracy. So you have to make your own copy. And in my video, I said, yeah, this is extra bad because that requires hacking the Switch. And that's also where we find more issues with the Mig Switch because people are saying, oh, people use the Mig Switch dumper. If you use that, that means your copy is definitely pirated because it has to strip copy protection to work. And that's probably why so many people are getting busted because they think, oh, this is going to be a legitimate copy from the Mig Switch dumper. And it's like, no. This is just like straight up an illegal copy because it violates DMCA and strips copy protection, and then Nintendo can easily detect that. Which is why they have every right to restrict functions of your Switch because you are violating their software license. Yeah, you own the hardware. The hardware ain't really that useful without the actual firmware on it, which is what you're opting into. You are breaking the terms of the game software and the console software, which is why they have every right to do this to you. And again, that's a slap on the wrist instead of just hard bricking your console for game piracy. So let's see what else is going on back here. No one enforced it, so to combat this, Nintendo has coding to detect such things, and this is the result. If you own the games already, what's the point of going the extra mile to have them all on one card to save 10 seconds to swap the cards out? And again, that just kind of goes into like the weirdness and uselessness of the Mig Switch from this entire legal perspective. And where the Mig Switch crosses the line is turning it into an identical functional cartridge on physical media, which is also like so many weird things about how this law works and interacts, because you're allowed a second copy. There's not really direct legal ways of getting that second copy because of copy protection and DMCA, because the software holders still have a lot of rights in the copyright, and this is like your narrow little thing of preservation that you can kind of use. And the reality is 99.9% of people that are using the Mig Switch are doing it with pirated ROMs. A very small amount of people actually like bought the dumper, but that's not going to be legitimate. And the reason why they have the dumper is because getting a hacked Switch and then getting your ROMs that way is a lot more difficult. So it's like an incredibly small amount of people actually doing it that way. And the only reason why you'd want to do that for usability is like modding through emulation, but you can't do that on a physical cartridge like the Mig Switch. And I'm kind of basing this off of what was said in Linus's video. In their disclaimer about legality and piracy, they say, we didn't get ROMs or firmware from the internet, we didn't circumvent any protections, and they got the games and keys to decrypt them from the console. So that's why, like, okay, when you have a hacked Nintendo Switch and, like, you do it through the means shown in this video, it's technically the legal way to do it. So if you use the MIG dumper, your copy is not legal, and then Nintendo is going to snag you for it. So that's why it's like, oh, 99.95% of ROMs that people are using on the MIG Switch are not legitimate because they're not going through the entire process to get their ROMs off of the Switch. And then even putting it on the MIG then gets weird because it's no longer a backup copy. And I guess you're kind of only allowed to use those copies on software emulation because you don't have like the physical media from it. And the legality is very gray, and it only gets more complex as technology has gotten more ubiquitous, that all of this is off of very old court rulings. So no one really knows if it like will go more for being allowed to have like a more usable copy, or if because of the rise and accessibility of piracy, it actually gets locked down even more, and then the old rulings are overturned. So no one wants to open Pandora's box on that. And then the end result is you're taking a lot of legal risk while also knowingly violating the terms of service of the game and console, which puts you at risk of losing features on your Nintendo Switch too. So it really just kind of shows, oh, the only people upset about this and defending the MIG Switch are using it for piracy and nothing else. The people that are legally getting their copy and using it responsibly, one, they know that they're still in a gray area and taking risks, but they're also being a lot more cautious about how they use it instead of, oh, I have Mig Switch and I use Mig Dumper, therefore it's all good, with being completely ignorant about the law, and then they get their consoles harmed, which is kind of what this post is about. Switch 2 banned, exactly what we warned you about. What is this nonsense? So we have Nintendo Switch crackers trying to take a moral high ground for attention, when the only goal is to be first and sell fast without any real consideration for the customer. This is what you get. Definitely not cool. So they're upset at the MIG Switch makers for just like being first and fast and not considering about the customer. It doesn't matter how it's made or how it's done. This is going to be the result no matter what, because it's a flash cart with illegal copies of the game on it. There's no way to protect the consumer from that in any capacity, no matter how much work and care is put into it. And Nintendo is being extra protective about the Nintendo Switch too, so they've got all kinds of detection systems that would take multiple companies. So it's like, ah, yes, you have to be 8th in line as everyone else gets dinged along the way for trying like their new iteration that Nintendo then busts. So you find the loophole that Nintendo hasn't detected until they do a software update, and then they detect it and they break you in. It was like, it's impossible to win. So like getting upset at Mig Switch is actually ridiculous here. And actually a lot of the responses here are pretty reasonable. You're surprised you're using an unauthorized game card, and then like surprise Pikachu face when it happens. Because a big problem with most people online is they can't separate facts from feelings. They are upset at a law or rule or something in society, but then they just treat it like, oh, because I'm upset, their entitlement, their narcissism, their brattiness. We see this a lot with cheating inside of Pokemon. If they want something to be different, they live their entire worldview as though theirs is the truth. And that leads to these things happening, and also leads to a lot of toxicity online. Very few people are able to have reasonable takes and be rational about them or understanding of reality, such as this one right here. You know, let's be honest. Mig Switch is not improved, endorsed, supported, or whatever. I personally don't care. If someone wants to use one, it's your device, you do what you want with it. However, Nintendo is well within their right to block it from working regardless of how anyone feels about it. So that's what I mean, like, you have to understand, like, Nintendo has their rights over you because it's their intellectual property. They are also protected by copyright law. You have one little section with Section 117. They have all of DMCA. You're not important, little bro. You're not smarter than the law or the system to think you found a workaround to having legal piracy. It doesn't work that way, and then people get upset because again, they're worthless. They have no value or contribution to society, and they feel overly entitled to full access to other people's creative works when they've never, ever had that. Another thing that really kind of restored my faith in humanity, because when it comes to story, all the YouTubers, they, one, don't understand copyright law. They're not breaking it down and, like, going into the second copy legality and issues with the Mig Switch, and they probably even say, like, oh yeah, Mig Dumper's fine. That's a legitimate copy of the game. They might also say, disclaimer, you might get banned for it. But something's gone wrong in society or the influencers in the community if so many people believe that they're able to strip copy protection and then have, like, a legal second copy without using the firmware of the system and then, like, trying to follow as close as possible to the quote-unquote correct way of doing it when we're still just in a gray area the entire time. And you get so many more views, so much more support and ad revenue if you pander to the brats, even though it's just objectively wrong and also completely immoral, where people like the nonsense of, oh, if you don't own it, then it's not piracy to steal it. That is objectively false. The law, like, the judge will laugh you out of the court as they hand you your fine for such idiocy. That argument only sounds good to someone with sub 90 IQ because that's how licenses work. That if you violate the terms, you lose the license, and that's what's holding everything together. To be fair, if you're illegally pirating games and playing them on the Switch 2 while online, that's your mistake. Big TOS red line. Let's see who got offended by that. Mongol. It should be Mongrel. The one who got banned is a modder that dumped his own cards legally on the MiG and still got banned. And then they posted proof, but it's with an unlocked Switch. So yeah, they dumped the games themselves, but they dumped illegal copies, and then they took a DRM-free version of the game onto Nintendo's servers and got banned for it. So, yep, actually, idiot right here. Well, like I said, my faith is a bit more restored because if you think about the Nintendo community, like, it's 90%. It's overwhelming. Everyone is about hacking and piracy and stealing games and hating on Nintendo and trying to be as malicious towards the company as possible. But, like, when IGN covers in, then the general gaming community says, like, okay, someone got wrecked for pirating games. It's actually, like, reasonable takes. You know, why can't everyone stop cheating? Super simple. Good. Don't be cheating. If you want to sail the 7 seas, do it on PC. So I guess, like, still pro-piracy, but, like, bro, Nintendo's the one you don't mess with. I'm not defending you if you're trying to slip one by Nintendo. So yeah, what do you think was going to happen? Mig Switch cartridge. Let's see all the cards they own. So, like, also just, nah, there's no way. You ain't doing it. None of you are legal. Maybe 1 in 1,000, 1 in 2,000, but no more than that. And then we got people, good, lol. Remember, guys, you don't own your Switch 2. Well, you actually do. You own the hardware to it. It's just not functional without the firmware and the software on it. Also, the misinformation and lies and stupidity, because, like, people still have no idea how the key cards work, even though it's clearly explained by Nintendo, where it's effectively just, like, a physical download code. So you put it in, you download it once, and then that's it. Now you have just a game. A functioning game that you don't need to be connected online to use, so you can't lose it. This is not new Nintendo TOS. The Switch was already like this. You can't violate the TOS. You can't pirate on the Switch. If you get caught hacking, it can get bricked, or at the very least, you're losing online. And apparently people can get, like, IP banned and stuff, and I don't know how deep it goes of, like, people having their Nintendo accounts banned as well. Again, technology is getting more ubiquitous and complex, so we're running into these issues more and more, even though just 2 decades ago, this really wasn't as much a problem because you're not taking your GameCube online. I know you technically can, but, like, no one was doing that. Even the PS2 can connect your PS2 online, but people didn't even have internet. Most people didn't have internet back in 2005, let alone an internet connection to their PS2 while having enough complexity and knowledge to be able to hack their PS2 and pirate games and stuff. And I don't even know if Sony servers even cared to detect it at that point. So now, like, piracy has gone up because the technology to do so has also increased, but the detection has gotten increased, and now everyone's online and getting caught. These are how the agreements have always worked for everything, so it's like, yeah, NPCs don't understand and just want to pirate things, and now Nintendo's actually being very, very serious, and these are the results. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.